All right, welcome everybody. Today we're going to wrap up our first section on contracts. And so we'll focus on discharging our obligations under contracts as well as damages. And I'll just jump right in here to the slides. Um, so yeah, if we start here with discharge, this slide is just kind of an introductory slide kind of showing everything that we'll talk about here with discharge. And same with this image. It shows how all of these mechanisms, avenues wherewith to discharge your obligations under a contract can come about. So let's start here with conditions. I think this is I like to start here simply because you've already been introduced to this with the Killian and Ricchetti case. And anyway, I've divided it up into two different types of conditions. You've got the condition precedent as well as the subsequent. The precedent is the easier one. That's the, if this happens, then boom, contract terms. Like you saw in Killian. This is very much Killian. Whereas the condition subsequent, it's a little rare. That this doesn't happen very often. The most common example that I've seen of conditions subsequent involve the example on the screen here. And this is true for every lawyer. It's the reason that law school graduation is a little bit more somber than maybe other graduations. So you just went through 3 years of pain and suffering, and you want to celebrate that. But at the same time, law school graduation is always in April. And after that, it's like you have to pass the bar exam or in July, or none of it was worth it. Like it was a total waste of 3 years. And so that's kind of the issue with law school graduation. And many of us, like myself included, had a job offer at graduation, but it was conditioned on me later, subsequently passing the bar exam. If I didn't pass the bar exam, then I would be let go. So it was kind of like, yes, you are hereby hired, but all of it goes away if you don't pass the bar exam in a couple of months. So those are conditions for you. All right. This leads us next to, as soon as the slide comes up, the next slide deals with performance. So this, I think, is the easiest way to just free yourself from the obligations of a contract. Just do it. Do whatever it is that you're supposed to do. If you're going to bring me a box of cookies and I'm going to pay you $10, bring me the box of cookies. You're done. It's over. So again, that's relatively simple if it's full performance. Now where it gets a little tough is where you've got partial, or in this case here, we'll stick with substantial performance. Maybe I say, bring me a box of 4 cookies from Crumble, and I want 3 to be chocolate chip, and I want the 4th one to be peanut butter chocolate or something. Well, you go and you come back and you tell me, Brother Hales, they didn't have that peanut butter chocolate chip one that you wanted, but they did have this Reese's one. Is that good enough? Well, if you did your best, so that's what this first one is. The party, you performed in good faith. You couldn't get the peanut butter chocolate chip one that I wanted, but you did your very best. That's what good faith is here. And it didn't vary greatly from the performance promised. So is the Reese's cookie about the same as the chocolate chip peanut butter cookie? Probably, like the same ingredients put together a little differently. And then 3, the performance must provide substantially the same benefit as promised. So you still brought me 4 cookies. One of them's a little different. Well, in that case, we're going to say that's probably substantial performance, and I'm still going to have to give you the $10. I can't like throw up my hands and yell at you because this isn't the specific cookie that I wanted. When it was substantially, and you did your best, and it's the best that you could possibly procure for me under the circumstances, we're going to call that substantial performance, and you therefore performed, and I've got to pay you the $10 is what this all means. So yeah, now where it gets a little bit tricky is here in the next slide when we start talking about things like partial performance. if it ever advances. I don't know what is up here. Okay, we'll talk about partial performance in a second. Let's go with whatever the slides pull up because it is slow today. So here we've got discharge by breach, and it's always implied material breach, right? And what that means is a serious breach, more than just a little breach, because that would still be substantial performance. But if you breach, well, then the other party is released from their obligations. And you know this from the introduction to contracts last week when I talked about the difference between contracts and covenants. In a contract, if one party breaches, remember, all bets are out, like it's gone, it's done. You breach, if you don't bring me cookies, I don't have to pay you anything. You breach, so I'm discharged from my obligations under our contract, this hypothetical thing that we're talking about with cookies. So again, if it's a minor problem, that's substantial performance. We're going to go forward. If it's a material breach, it's over. And so that's, I think, the right way to look at material breach, is it releases the other party from their obligations under the contract. Okay, now we've got anticipatory breach. This gets kind of fun. This is this situation where I tell you to bring me 4 cookies and I'll pay you $10. And I say, like, I want them today by 4 o'clock or whatever. And you get busy, you get tied up in homework or exams or whatever, and you don't get the cookies to me in time. Well, it's not that you didn't get the cookies to me in time. It's not 4 o'clock yet, it's 3 o'clock. But you're still in Jackson, Wyoming. Okay, so the chances of you being able to, it's an hour-and-a-half drive. The chance of you being able to get to Rexburg, pick up the cookies, and bring them to me within an hour are slim to none. So if you call me and say, Brother Hales, I'm not going to be able to do this. Well, that is what we call anticipatory breach. Basically, you've told me it's not going to happen. It's not possible. There's no way that this is going to happen. Okay. So once that happened, once you tell me that you can't do it, I can say, okay, you've breached. I'm going to get somebody else to get my cookies. And maybe the only other person that I can get to buy me cookies, to get me cookies by 4 o'clock, is somebody that's going to charge me $20 instead of the $10 that you were going to charge me. So what does this mean? Well, we'll talk about this when we get to damages in a little bit. It means I'm going to pay this other person $20 and then I'm going to sue you for $10. Again, would I actually sue you for $10? No, but add a couple zeros to these numbers and you can see why people end up in court over breach. Now, anticipatory breach is not this bottom quote here. It's going to be really hard for us to make this deadline. So this example is more like you being in Jackson at 2 o'clock and you need to have the cookies to me by 4 o'clock and you call me and say, Brother Hales, it's going to be really hard for me to be able to get these cookies to you by 4. It's an hour-and-a-half drive. If there's traffic over the pass, it's an hour 45, and then I got to get the cookies and bring them. Like, does that qualify as anticipatory breach? And you should probably be shaking your head saying, no, it's still possible for the other party, for the you in this case, to get me the cookies by 4 o'clock, the allotted time. So again, I can't say, if you call me at 3 or at 2 and say it's going to be really difficult, I can't claim breach and hire somebody else. I have to wait until it's, and this is tough, right? Like, because you have to wait until it's a sure thing that the other party is going to breach and then claim breach and move on. Okay, so anyway, that's anticipatory breach for you. All right, let's see what comes up next here. Waiting, here we go. All right, discharge by agreement. This I really like teaching this because there are a lot of ways that we can talk about and discharge by agreement. So you and I have this agreement that you're going to bring me cookies, 4 of them, 4 cookies. I'm going to pay you $10. Well, it could be that we just like, all of a sudden, neither of us want to do it. Like, I may say, you know what, I'm on I decided I don't want to be obese or whatever. And so like, I'll pass on the 4 cookies. And you're like, cool, I don't want to do it anyway. I'm busy with business law homework or something. And if we're both cool with it, that's kind of like novation that we talked about last time. If all the parties are fine with the substitution, well, then there's no issue. There's no breach because we both agreed that we're not going to go forward with this contract. Totally permitted. All right. Now, these other bullet points here, don't worry too much about this. Accord and satisfaction is basically what we just talked about. Now, a payment in full check. Okay, so this is where the cost of tuition for my class definitely becomes worth it. Many students in the past have used what I'm about to teach you to their advantage down the road, especially with rent checks and well, just really anything where they owe money to somebody else. And to show this to you, I'm going to bring up my iPad here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out a check. Okay. And yeah, back in the old days, we used to use checks all the time. Now we use Venmo, but stay with me because a lot of times, many of you still pay your rent with a check. Right, here's your signature line. So we do our signature. Here's where you write out who you're paying. Here's where you write out how much money it's going to be in that little box. Here's the date. All right, so now you can kind of see what's going on. So let's say you owe me $1,000. So things got really tough for you. You came to me and said, Brother Hales, I really need your help. And I said, okay, here's $1,000. All right, so you're going to write a check back to me because this is the payment back, right? So you're going to write this check to me, Michael Hales. Well, I lent you the $1,000 for a month. And at the end of the month, you're supposed to pay me $1,000. I don't charge interest. I'm cool like that. I don't, whatever. I totally would. Well, in this case, after a month, you don't have $1,000. And it looks like you're never going to be able to get $1,000. You've lost your job. Things have just turned south for you. All right. Well, this is the payment in full check option that is available to you. Again, so every time I start to teach this, some students look at me like, Brother Hales, you should be locked up in jail. Like, this is, how could you ever teach us something so wrong or immoral or whatever? This is not wrong and immoral if this is the best you can do. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to write me a check for 500, 00, do all of that, put the 500 in here. And then you're going to do this. And many of you don't even know this is there. This right here is what we call the memo line. The only time you've ever seen anything written there is when your grandma sends you a check for your birthday or something and she says like, I love you or whatever. All right, but this is what a memo line is also for. Right here, you're going to put right here, see if I can do this. I'm going to put payment in full. And if you have more space, you can put payment in loan, or sorry, payment in full for the loan dated May 1st, 2020, or whatever it was, whenever I lent you the money. And you're going to send this to me. All right, when I get this check, I've got an option. If I cash this check, I'm accepting it as payment in full. I can see that. Like you didn't do the Santa Claus thing where that memo line right there is like you know, something like that I can't even read. You put it in regular text and it just says payment in full for the loan. If I then cash it, it means that I've accepted your terms. What do we call this right here? That's your offer. Right? If I cash it, I accepted. All right. Now you can get more detailed. You don't necessarily have to, but you can put something in that memo line that says, by cashing this check, you accept this payment as payment in full for the loan. But again, you don't have to get super specific as long as it's unambiguous what's going on here. That works. Now, where students of mine have used this in the past successfully, typically it's been in rent payment checks. So if they've fallen behind and they've got a month-to-month payment plan or whatever it is, rather than like a semester ahead, whatever, they've done this. And I've had at least a dozen, I'm probably getting close to 24 students that have told me that this has worked, that their landlord accepted it. And why, and think about why, if you're the landlord, why would you accept this? If rent is $700, but you get this check for payment in full for $300, why would you accept that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One, it's expensive to go after you for that extra money. And evictions, that takes a long time. And during coronavirus, evictions are kind of shut down, not even happening in a lot of the country. So why not just take 50% and save the $2,000 in attorney's fees? Because an eviction is going to be at least $2,000, and they can be $7,000 if it's contested and you have to go to court. And no, just take the $300, wipe it off of that. Now, the landlord could come back and say, I can't accept 300. Could you do 400? And then you get into the negotiation phase. That's totally fine. But this, again, I wish I could see your faces right now, because some of you are like, I can't believe Brother Hales is teaching us how to be criminals. No, I'm teaching you that, well, I'm teaching you contract law. And like I wrote out, you put in a new offer and they may accept it. They might not. Like, the worst that could happen is they say, nice try, Jimmy, give me the full check. And then you can talk to them more after that. But that's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, well, yeah, what usually happens is they just say, sure. Some students ask, like, what if it's just like an office manager or something, that it's not the landlord, it's just the office, just they stamp everything and just cash them. Well, they'll stop doing that after you do this, because if you do this and they stamp it and deposit your check, and then they come back to you asking for the extra $300, you're just gonna like pull up your electronic copy of the check with the memo and say, sorry, you accepted my partial payment as a payment in full. And they'll probably look sheepishly and think, shoot, Jimmy got us. And then they may make changes because what they were doing was incorrect and didn't fit their goals of getting full payment from anybody. But again, that's on them. That's their mistake. You've done everything right. So, okay, so that's payment in full check. Again, I like I said, I'm probably up to over 20 students that have already done this, and it works well for them. So use it, and don't abuse this. That's the other thing. Like, I need you to see my full face for this. Don't abuse this. Yeah, like I've had some students that are like, it was so fun, I just tried it out and it worked. And I'm like, you're a horrible person. Like, go pay the rest of it. You only use this when it's your last option, ethically speaking. Use this when you don't have the $700 for rent that month. Use it then. And if you have $500, pay $500. Don't try to do a $200 payment in full check. Do the best that you can. And if you don't abuse this, this is a great and ethical and efficient way to negotiate changes to your contracts. In other words, discharge by agreement. You've altered the agreement in a way that both parties agreed to. Okay, so caveat there. All right, release. This is where you can release. Release and waiver are, for our purposes, essentially the same. There's some nuanced difference there, but let's just think of release and waiver as the same. You may have brought me the cookies and I say, you know what, shoot, I don't have any money. And at that point you can say, Brother Hales, this was a gift. You've been a great professor. Have have 4 cookies, at which point I'll shed a tear and say thank you. And there you've released me from my obligations under the contract. Or in other words, you've waived my, really, that's more release. Waiver is kind of like where you waive. Anyway, again, I'm not going to get into the differences between that, but I think the best example that we have in the scriptures is found in Matthew 18:21 through 35. This is the servant that, and if you remember the story, I love it so much because of the contrast, right? You've got the Lord, the King, that lent money, an obscene amount of money. Like if you've seen the recent General Conference talk by President Holland, he talks about this same parable, ungrateful servant, right? That had a debt to the King that was so astronomical that it would be like trillions of, like we can't even think how much money this was. And the King came, when the servant came and begged for forgiveness, the King said, I freely forgive you. And then that servant went away, that man went away to his servant, I should say, who owed him something like $5. And this man who had just had everything forgiven to him enforces that, like brings out the full force of the law against his servant that owed him $5, threw him in jail, basically exercised all of his rights under the law. And it goes to show, like the parable is incredible because it I'm sure you understand this, but all of us have that insurmountable debt that we just would never be able to return to live with Heavenly Father. And yet, because of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, we can be forgiven of everything. And anyway, and so the fact that some of us would try to be so unforgiving is just absurd. And I can tell you that I've seen this. I've done a lot of legal work for a lot of different businesses and a lot of individuals. The happiest people that I've ever met are the ones that can forgive people and let things go. These are happy people. I've seen the flip side. I've seen individuals that sue little old grandmas, literally, and try to ruin their life financially because they can. And those people are always miserable. It's a horrible thing to see. And so what I'm begging you to do is that when you have the option to forgive someone, and this can be financially or otherwise, I hope that you'll do it. I hope that you will freely forgive people, that you will be very generous in your ability to forgive others and the debts that they owe you. It will just make you so happy and a better person. So anyway, that's my little insight into discharge by agreement. Okay. So yeah, let's move on from that. All right, now we get into damages. So with damages, the thing that I want you to kind of keep in mind is that this list, this bullet point list that you've got on this slide, usually you'll pick one. Now sometimes they're cumulative. You can add them up, but others it's just you pick one or the other. So let's kind of start with compensatory damages. This is the easiest. This is kind of the foundation. This is what we normally look at. What this does is it exists to make the non-breaching party whole, or in other words, put them back in the position. Well, no, I'm not going to say what I was about to say. We're going to make them whole. We're going to put them in the position that they would have been had the other party fulfilled their agreement. Let's say it like that. Okay. So Hallmark versus Murley. This was an interesting case where an executive of Hallmark left She was actually let go during a downsize. I think this was the last recession. And when she was let go, she was given millions of dollars as part of her exit package. Now, part of the terms of her exit package was that she wouldn't go work for a competitor. It's a case because she did. All right. So very shortly after she left Hallmark, she took her millions of dollars, and then she started working for a competitor within a year. Like I think the agreement was she wouldn't work for a competitor for 2 years, but after 1 year, she started working for a competitor. So the question became, how much does Murley owe Hallmark? And for damages, Hallmark was seeking the millions of dollars that they gave her as part of that agreement to not go work for a competitor. Now, they were also seeking for additional money, additional damages, saying that, they also wanted her salary, basically, that she was collecting now from this new gift or greeting card company. And the court said no. Like, here, compensatory damages is you're just going to get your millions of dollars back that you gave Murley as part of that exit package. Why? Because that makes you whole. That puts you back in the position that you would have been had you not, or had she not breached. Basically, that they were just going to get the money back, but not additional damages. Let's just put it like that. That's probably all that we need to know about this. Think about and think about it like this. Compensatory damages exist. Let's go back to our cookies. I was going to pay you $10 to bring me 4 cookies. You can't do it, so I have to pay somebody else $20 for the cookies. This is simple math. I expected to pay 10. I had to pay 20. That additional amount, that $10, that's what I'm going to sue you. That's my compensatory damages. I expected to get a box of cookies for 10. Because of your breach, I had to pay 20. Now, I don't get to sue you for 20. That doesn't make any sense. Then I get a free box of cookies. So with this, kind of always look at the difference between what somebody expected to pay and what they ended up paying. Subtract. This is, for you accountants, this shouldn't be difficult. Simple subtraction. 20 minus 10 equals 10. That's what I'm suing you for. Those are my damages. All right. That's how compensatory damages work. All right. Let's see if I can get to the next slide here. This jumped quite a bit. Compensatory damages. All right. Consequential damages. I've got to cover this because this will be on the exam. This occurs when, let's say it like this. Let's use this example. Mason contracts to buy Quench, a specialty sports drink from Nathan. Nathan knows that Mason is going to sell the Quench drink during the Super Bowl. Nathan breaches. Well, here we've got a problem, right? And that is, Mason was maybe going to buy the Quench for $60 or whatever. And then he was going to sell it at the Super Bowl for $6,000. Just an incredible markup. It's, if you didn't know this, the Super Bowl is just marketing mecca, really. And so if we make Nathan only pay Mason for the amount of the breach, the $60, well, that doesn't take into account the $6,000 that Mason lost as a result of Nathan's breach. And so think of it like this. Let's stick with our cookie example. You don't deliver the cookies. I was going to pay you $10, but you knew that I needed the cookies because with the cookies, I was going to go bribe, or let's use something legal here. With the cookies, I was going to, a simple example, I was going to sell them for $20 to somebody else. And you knew all of this and you're fine with it. Well, in that case, I may not just get $10 from you. I'm going to probably get $20. Why? My expectation was to take those cookies and sell them to somebody else. So I never paid you the $10, but I lost $20 from this other person. In that case, not only stay with me here, I'm suing you either for $20 or for the box of cookies plus an extra $10. Does that make sense? Keep in mind what I was expecting to do. I was going to sell them for 20 bucks. Um, and so, yeah, I expected for $10 to get a box of cookies plus an extra $10. So I could either sue you for $20 or for the box of cookies plus $10. That's consequential. Now, for this, the breaching party has to know that they screwed up. They have to know about the next step that I was going to take in this example, which was reselling it or whatever. And so that's important with consequential damages. Anyway, the example in the exam has to do with the P2B conference on campus or whatever. So you'll know to look for that now. Okay. What's not in my slides that I need to tell you about are liquidated damages. It is in the reading. Liquidated damages is where I say, you're going to sell me a box of cookies and I'm going to pay you 10 bucks. If you don't bring me the cookies, then you just have to pay me $5. Right? That's liquidated damages. And so keep that in mind. There's an example on the exam for that. Go ahead and reread it in the chapter if that doesn't make sense to you. It's just the terms of the contract say what the damages are going to be if one party breaches. That's liquidated damages, okay? All right, mitigation occurs with all contracts. This is actually funny. Last night I was at Walmart and I ran into a student and another party breached and he was like, but I know I've got to mitigate damages, so I'm doing this, this, and this. It was one of like those proud moments. And it was great because I had my daughter with me and she got to see how proud I was. So mitigation means that if you don't bring cookies to me, well, one, I don't have to pay you $10. What it also means is that I can't just, like, let's say I need those cookies. And if I don't have those cookies, then, my damages increase. Like I need the cookies. Stick with me here. This is a silly hypothetical, but let's say that every day that I don't get those cookies, I get fined $5 from somebody else. And so that's why I hired you to bring me the cookies for 10 bucks, was so that I would stop having to pay this fine. Again, I can't imagine a scenario where I'm going to get fined 10 bucks for not having cookies or $5 a day for not having cookies, but stick with me. So what I could do is I could say, you breach, you owe me $10. And then tomorrow comes and I say, now you owe me 15. And then the next day comes and now I say, you owe me 20. I can't do that. What it means is I have to go get cookies as quickly as I can. I have to mitigate my losses. All right? And a good example here is this person named Susan that worked for BYU in the library. And let's say that Susan was wrongfully terminated from her job. Right? BYU was wrong to fire her. It was a illegal reason to fire Susan. And again, we'll get to this when we get to employment law soon. Well, Susan could say, I was wrongfully terminated and I had this job and they paid me that's wrong. They paid me, let's say, $70,000 a year to be a librarian at BYU. And now they fired me. And so I'm suing them for $70,000 for the rest of my life. Well, that's got to be wrong. Susan needs to go get another job. So if BYU wrongfully fired Susan, then that's bad. They should be assessed damages for that. But what if, let's say that that school right next to BYU, UVU, offers her a job for $60,000 a year as a librarian there, and she turns it down. Well, now when BYU is assessed damages for their wrongful termination, instead of having to pay $70,000, they're only going to have to pay $60,000. Sorry, they're only going to have to pay $10,000. I can do math. Why? Because Susan turned down a job that would have paid her $60,000, and she didn't do it. So BYU doesn't have to pay that $60,000. Instead, they would have had to pay $70,000. Now they're only going to have to pay $10,000. Why? Because she turned down a job that would have mitigated her losses. That's what this is all about right there. Okay. So that's the lesson here. And this wraps up our second unit. It's our contracts unit. So go ahead and let me know if you have any questions. I'll still be holding office hours during class time and all of that. But yeah, you should be all set now. So good luck.